Well, Joanna, we know you have just an immensely bright future, and we hope that you've achieved every dream you have for your gift, and as long as you're with us, we'll be very blessed. So we're grateful. So, folks, we are starting a new series. It's the Lenten season. I don't know if that means anything to you, but every once in a while I become somewhat doctrinaire about ministry and follow traditional paths. This happens to be one of those moments. Don't hold your breath for the next one, because it may not happen for a while. But I do like this notion of being intentional, and especially as a collective community, because there's power in a shared intention. We know that. We know that in any organization that we're in, any groups that we're in. So what I want to do with you, for those of you that want to play, those of you that want to make this commitment with me for the next 40 days, which is roughly the period of time between now and Easter Sunday, I'd like for you to join with me in a prayer practice, an internal practice that is outlined in a book that I found a few years ago that I thought was really a very simple and clear understanding of how we can go inward. You know, all of us know that this spiritual life has to have an inward dimension to it. And perhaps for some of you, that is difficult. It is personally for me. You know, I am someone who loves words. You know, I just love words. I love the sound of words. I like to play with words. I like to play, to play on words. And Denise tells me that I wake up in the morning, immediately I have a complete thought and complete sentences, which makes her completely crazy. And she would like me to become more familiar with silence aspect of my spiritual growth and development. So that is what we're going to be working on. And we're going to talk a lot about the silence. So as you see my challenge in this whole series here, but I could do like what the Buddha did. Have you heard the story of the Buddha? His greatest sermon was when he stood up and he held a single flower and said not a word. And they said it was his greatest sermon. Well, I'm not the Buddha. But I did think about holding up 7 and doing a series. This is it. I think that the reason that the silence can be difficult for us is because it's unfamiliar. It's like anything else. You know, if someone tells you that they want you to drive to a destination that you'd never been to before, and you don't know how to get there, and you've never particularly been to a place, and you have some just mild trepidations just because of unfamiliarity. And then maybe if you have gone places and you have had some difficult experiences, you had a hard time feeling safe and okay, then it's even more difficult to want to return. And the silence for many of us is a little bit scary, because the silence is lacking those distractions which we often use to keep us from dealing with an apparent emptiness. And yet, every mystic will tell you, everyone who has made that conscious contact with the divine, who has reached that state of enlightenment, will tell you that unless you get in touch with that realm, that silent realm, you will not have made that connection with the divine. So we know that it's essential. It's part of our journey. It's part of our path. And what I hope to do over this time is that if we do this together, you know, we lock arms and we say, we're going to commit to this practice together, that we will bolster each other's willingness, and we will find the resolve to move through some of those discomforts and to move into that beautiful place of the silence that we all have within us. So before I begin in telling you about the practice, which is outlined in this book that I'll tell you about in a moment, I want to say a little bit about the divine and how we see the divine. If you're new to Unity, this is really important. But it's always good for us to remember that what we are talking about when we talk about making connection with the divine, we are talking about an experience that is of love, of peace, of wholeness, and it is something that is within us. That Jesus said the kingdom of God is within, it's at hand. He was not describing a God that resides up in the sky somewhere apart from us. So it's us remembering that this divine, this which we are wanting to make connection with, is not out there somewhere. It's here. Rumi said, I have lived on the lip of insanity, wanting to know reasons, knocking on a door. It opens. I've been knocking from the inside. See, so often we don't understand how we make connection with this higher self because we are thinking that we are outside of it and that it is outside of us and that there is this disconnect. And so we're constantly looking out into our life through the senses that we have to find those situations, circumstances, or conditions that we think would be perfectly conducive to giving us the peace that passes human understanding or the love that is without condition. We are oriented towards the external. And you know, I don't know about you, but after having lived these number of years, I have never found enough to be enough. No matter what it was that I got, no matter how much I got of what I got, it was never enough. No matter how much she loved me, there was some part of me that still didn't feel loved. You know, no matter how much I had, there was always some part of me that felt still lacking, still. There's an imaginary drip over here. I will not walk there again. You're safe. We also have design plans for the ark over in this room over here. So be present here and now. God is here, God is now, God is now. I'm talking to myself. Okay. So this notion that it's out there is, we come by it honestly because of the way we are oriented by our senses. And so we know that the work is going to be for us to find some way to begin to soften our orientation to the external world. Find some way to sort of begin to let that sort of go out of focus a bit so that that isn't what we perceive as being our only reality, right? So that's what meditation's about. That's what prayer's all about. It's to begin to reestablish our picture of reality, and it has first to do with what's not true before we can get to the truth. So we begin to chisel away at these things, and that's what this practice is all about. You know, there's nothing that could possibly be done by the divine to get any closer to you. And so the work must be for who? For me, for you. Because we have erected barriers to the awareness of the presence and the power and the love of God, and we built it, so we have to be the ones that tear it down. We built it. God didn't build it. God is not withholding itself from us. Love is not being kept from us. Peace is not an elusive thing because someone says we're not worthy of peace. And abundance is not something that's still, you know, at arm's length from us because someone decided that we don't deserve it. We made all those stories up. We made up theologies about that kind of stuff. And we have found ourselves on our knees praying and begging and beseeching and supplicating. And that's what prayer has been for many, many people. And has it done any, I would say, darn, if I wasn't in church, good? No. We still experience lack and limitation. It's not the fervency of our prayers. It's not the quality, not the content of our prayers that's wrong. It's the directionality. It's where we look. And this series invites us to look inward. It's something that I don't want to do, but I know that I must. I know that this is the journey to the divine. Course in Miracles says this: the journey to God is merely the reawakening of the knowledge of where you are always and what you are forever. It is a journey without distance to a goal that has never changed. And truth can only be experienced. It cannot be described, and it cannot be explained. You know, theologians and ministers and spiritual teachers for thousands of years have tried to explain the truth. as if somehow an understanding would get you there. But it's like, the master, who's pointing at the moon, and the fool looks at the finger, and the wise man looks at the moon and follows it. I bet a fool. Have you? Have you fallen so in love with the scriptures or the teachings or the practices that you have been on the road and never arriving? I have. I feel like I've been on a road for a long, long time. And some days I go, have I made any progress at all? Have I really made any progress in this life? But then, in a moment when I think not, and I have that peace, that moment that is ineffable, indescribable. Well, there's no word, there's no sound, there's no description, there's no explanation. It's just a stillness. It's just a quietness. I've experienced sometimes in nature. I experience it sometimes in meditation. It says to me, this is it. It doesn't need anything. It doesn't need anyone to applaud it. It doesn't need anyone to justify it or say, yeah, you found it. Its isness is complete. In God, we live and move and we have our being. We must become familiar with being. Being is when the journey stops. It's the end of the road. No more seeking. No more, well, one more thing. If I could just have one more thing, then I'd be happy. That's not being. That's doing. That's seeking. That's pursuing. That's traveling. That's trying to build something out here that's so grand and so wonderful and so amazing and so magnificent and so beautiful and so filled with every want and wish and desire that somehow that would then translate into an internal experience where you would want not. Anyone had that fantasy? Besides me? The old Greek dramas, they would depict these terrible situations, in the scene, and then they would swing a god in from the wings to disentangle this desperate situation. And there's a part of us that still believes that we believe in a God like that. We believe that somehow if our prayers were fervent enough, that we were somehow, really, our efforts were really refined in our spiritual work, that somehow that we would be extricated from some situation by some divine intervention, We love the stories of the parting of the Red Sea and all that because it speaks to us of a God that, in our most desperate hour will get his attention and it'll save us. But here's the truth, guys. You may not like this. You may decide not to come back next Sunday. I don't know. It may affect your tithing and your support for the church. I don't know. But I'm here to tell you what I know to be the truth. Whatever God can do, God has done. Whatever God can do, God is doing. Do you want a capricious God? You know what a capricious God is? That's like us. Made in our image and likeness. Having a good day, I think I'll be nice to you. Woke up on the wrong side of heaven today and you were in trouble. You definitely are in the worm of the dust category today. And you ain't getting any favor from this God, by God. So help me. We don't want that. And so if we are going to give up that notion, we have to entertain the notion that would belie that, which is that God is already infinite love, infinite peace, infinite joy, infinite abundance. It's all there. It's already been given. We were made in its image and likeness. And the only thing missing from us knowing that is what lies within us as the barrier, the obstacle, the arguments, the fears, the beliefs, and the false self. And that then becomes the path. Yeah? Get out the lawnmower, you know. We're going to cut these weeds down, and as we do this, in time, we begin to perceive that which has been there all along. You know, have you ever let the weeds grow in your backyard? And, well, of course you never have. Who's going to go, oh, yeah, I do that all the time. Santa Barbara, yeah, we love that. But if you have, let's say you have the back 40 of your property, you know, that you don't mow, and then it grows up and years go by, and then someday you decide it's time to clear the weeds, and wow, there's the bike that you thought you lost, and all these little treasures show up. Well, that's what we're here to do. We're here to reclaim and bring back into focus and to bring back into awareness and to own that which already is ours, but it's become obstructed. It's become veiled. It's become hidden behind the false, the beliefs. So the silence. Jesus said, you know, go into your room and shut the door. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. What was he saying? Go into your room and close the door. Was he talking about a room with a door? No, of course not. I mean, what if you lived in a cave? You know, you don't have a door. Jesus was speaking to all of us. He was talking about the inner. He was talking about the mind. He was talking about the mind. Go into your closet and close the door. And your Father who hears in secret will reward you. What does that mean? Does that mean that God is going to compensate us because we're good truth students and we're doing our prayers and meditation? That's not the kind of reward Jesus ever referred to. Jesus always talked about the reward of spiritual practice was in itself. It's a consequence of doing the work. If I spend time in the silence, I'm rewarded by the silence that I experience by doing the work, not for it, not as some sort of a transaction that comes to me from on high by some grace that's withheld until I'm suddenly worthy and now I have earned it. Are we done with that? God loves us unconditionally, holds nothing back. It's here, it's now, but we hunger and we thirst because we don't go into the room enough and close the door and listen. And I'm an offender. Fortunately, forgiveness is part of this process. We don't beat ourselves up over it. Silence. Watched Gravity on video last night, and there's a line in there. George Clooney asks, what's her name? Sandra Bullock. Two astronauts floating in space, making of a perfect romance. Right? Never happened. But anyway, they're floating next to each other, and he says to her, he says, so what do you like about being up here? What do you really like about being up here? And she has this look, you know, where she's trying to articulate her feelings. She's kind of looking around, you know, and then she looks down the planet, and she says, the silence. I could get used to it. She says, I could get used to it. We have to have an experience of it. And the more time we have an experience of it, the more it will be more what we are drawn to. And it will seem more familiar to us. And it will seem more like the place that we would want to spend more time. And of course, the opposite is true. The more we avoid it, the more we stay away from it, the more foreboding that concept of going into the quiet will be. So we're going to encourage each other. We're going to use this practice, and I'll say a little bit about it now. This book was written by Jim Rosemergy. He's a Unity minister and author. I like the way he writes. It's eloquent, but it's very accessible. And this is called A 40-Day Guide to the Power of Personal Prayer, the Gathering. And he has in here 8 steps. And all of these steps, well, actually, there's 7 steps, and one of them is just the silence. But the other steps, the first 6 steps have to do with clearing, the clearing. And so every week, we are going to be talking about that here. We're going to take one of those steps so we can unpack it, so that these steps become to you a practice. And what I would recommend that you do is that if you can get the book, great. We have them for sale here today. We also have, if you can't afford a copy, we have, I think, 5 or 6 copies that you can borrow from the church. And I recorded a CD. So it's a little difficult sometimes, a little unwieldy to try to, read step 1 and close your eyes and sit in the silence. So I recorded a CD that has these steps on them with space in between each one. There's an opening introduction to explain how it works. Then there's a meditation, just a relaxation meditation, and then the steps. So that's on the CD. Those are available to you today on a love offering basis as well. I think we've got about 50 of those. If you didn't get one, if you don't get one today, we'll have them next week. We're also going to get them up on our website this week, these practices, so you could download it, put it on your iPod, whatever you want to do to put it on a portable basis somewhere. So the first step, we're going to hit tonight. We got tonight. Just because it's dark outside, it's not night yet. Okay, so step 1. This is the one that gives people a lot of fits, although pretty much everything I say, I've been noticing, gives people a lot of fits. But this one may be the most challenging, so we're going to hit it right off the bat while you're still into it. I release my human need. I release my human need. Now, wait a minute now. Wait a minute. Whoa, wait a minute. Isn't that what God's good for? And I talked about that a moment ago. We have the tendency to think that what we want to do is we want to bring our needs to God. And, it's kind of like, it's a punch list for this contractor. Here are the things that I'd like taken care of in my life. If it wouldn't have to be too much trouble, you could take care of these things. And by Friday, if, this is the kind of schedule I'm on here, I need to have a happy weekend, okay? So yeah, number 1, I don't know what's going on with my son. He's acting a little funny. Maybe you could shift the attitude a little bit. The things that work, I'm not getting along too well with my coworkers. Could you, put some love in their hearts? What would be the big deal, So we have these lists. This is how we think that prayer is supposed to work. The problem with that, of course, is this. If we remember the premise that all that we need has already been given to us in our creation, and our fullness, our spiritual wholeness, includes everything that those human needs would indicate are missing, then what would the divine respond to that? So what? So what's going on in your life? What's going on inside of you? And that's what Denise, the work that she does is so much. This awareness that what we're experiencing in life has everything to do with our connection with our true self or our false self. If I'm connected with my true self, you can't make me feel bad about me, no matter what. If I'm connected with that part of me that is not connected with the truth of who I am, then I can find some part of me that will agree with your assessment of me, and I will feel bad, and I will make you 100% responsible for that. But is that because of what you did or because of my orientation to my response to what happened? So releasing the human need is this. It's not that we're suddenly going to say, oh, I don't have any needs anymore. I'm now praying with the Unity people, and we're above all human needs. Yes, we've transcended human. We are spiritual beings, thank you. No, 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 no. No, no, you know me. I will tell you about all my human needs and my foibles. But we won't let them get in the way. See, that's the difference. You can still say, I hurt, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm worried. You can say those things, but just not when you're praying. Because God does not respond to neediness. Because God knows that you have what you need. God does not respond to neediness because God sees no lack. You're talking to the wrong God if you're looking for a God and go, oh, yeah, you know, your rent's coming up this week and, you know, you're not working very hard and your relationships suck, don't they? I mean, we can see that. I mean, look how many relationships, you're like a serial relationship killer. I mean, you're just going through all these people and what's with that? And boy, we got a lot of work to do with you, you know, so I don't know if I can do anything by this weekend, but I'll see what I can do. It's not that kind of a God. It's just not. We want a God like that. We just want to bring our laundry list and have it all cleaned and folded for us, don't we? Would it be too much, you know? So God does not respond to neediness. God responds to consciousness. And if we have a consciousness of the truth of who we are, then we are meeting the divine where it is real, where it is true. And then we begin to experience what God knows already about us. We begin to experience a little bit more peace, a little bit more wholeness, a little bit more love, a little bit more joy. And then we take that consciousness and we enter into our life with that increasing awareness of who and what we are. And do you think our life might change as those changes take place within us? Nobody does? Oh, there's some heads. Okay, good. It was rhetorical. When Denise speaks, sometimes she'll say, I need a yes on that. So I needed a yes on that. Amen. So here's the deal. So as the beautiful song says, go within or go without. Go within. Going within is not so much that it's a spiritual practice just so that we can say, I'm meditating, I'm a meditator now. It's actually to make conscious contact with that indwelling sense of self, that higher self. And that's where we will find the answer to our every need. Jesus said, do not judge by appearances, but by righteous judgment. And righteous judgment is to know that you already have the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth within. So good. So we're releasing neediness. We're entering into the silence. And next week, I'm going to tell you what's coming up. See if you even want to think about coming back for this one. Next week, step 2 is I accept my human condition so I can express my spiritual nature. I accept my human condition so I can express my spiritual nature. So what you'll see about this, and this is why I love this material so much, is that it embraces the human on the way to the realization of the divine. Because, you know, I said this to a couple of people last Sunday because I really share a lot of my humanness with you, and some people might think that that's not too spiritual. But here's how I see it. I don't think that we need to become more spiritual so much as we need to embrace our humanity more. I think we need to become more fully our human selves. I think we need to love ourselves right where we are. Oh, we'll never make any growth. We'll never make any progress while we're beating ourselves up. Does anyone ever come from a religion where thinking that you could be you could be shaped into some sort of perfection, and then you would have arrived in the kingdom of heaven. The gates would swing wide for you. Oh, you now are pure and worthy like the Mother Mary and the baby Jesus. Has anyone ever felt that that might not be the best way? The master of life loved everyone right where they were, and all the people of his time, the Pharisees and the theologians were all saying, what are you doing hanging around with the prostitutes? And what are you doing with the tax collectors? And what are you doing with all these people? And the Samaritan. Jesus understood that it is loving ourselves right where we are, which is the springboard for growth. If someone said to you, you're in a relationship with them, and they said, here are the things I don't like about you that you need to change. How willing would you might be to make those changes in your life? Versus someone who said, someone who gave you an attitude of space and acceptance, and maybe not perfect, but God's love is perfect. It just allows us to come to ourselves on our own time. There's no race to the finish. You know, no one's going to be left behind. But we can leave ourselves behind if we judge ourselves. So I'm hopeful that this series will be gentle enough in terms of embracing ourselves right where we are, that we'll be encouraged to stay the course for the fruits of the Spirit that will surely come as we work with this methodically, little by little, gradually letting go of who we're not, of those obstacles and those barriers and those blocks to the awareness of the truth of our being, because that's the journey that I know works. And I think you'll find it as well if you join us for these 40 days. So there will be books today. We'll have a table set up in the narthex. And you don't have to do this, of course. If you want to, that's great. We'll have more books next week. We'll have more CDs if we need them. But I think it could be profoundly powerful at the end of 40 days to see where this community could be in a collective consciousness, have been taking this journey together. So I invite you, and I'm excited about how we may grow together as a community. So let's take a moment. So in the consciousness of the truth of our being, we give great thanks for these master teachers and these master teachings that lift us out of the perception that there is something missing in us. And we open ourselves this week to a little bit more willingness to see what is blocking us from knowing that love that we so desperately seek in the world, for that peace that may remain elusive, and for the joy that sometimes feels unattainable. And we listen to the voice of those who know that they know. That I am with you always. My peace I leave with you. The kingdom of God is within, and it is the Father's good pleasure to have given you the kingdom. And whenever you pray, pray believing that you have received, and it will be yours. In this consciousness, we move forward for this day, for this life, for this journey of remembering. And we give thanks. And so it is. Amen.